She fed a hungry kid at a charity gala and got canned right then and there. The next morning, 3 black SUVs rolled up to her diner. Turns out the boy's dad is the city's most feared mafia boss, and his kiddo won't eat unless she's around. Clara's feet were absolutely killing her. She'd been slinging food on the buffet line at the Grandview Hotel for a solid 4 hours, flashing a smile at wealthy donors who barely gave her a second look while they piled caviar onto plates that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The annual Children's Hope Charity Gala was the biggest deal of the season in Chicago, and Clara really needed this catering gig to make ends meet. "More shrimp, please," a woman with a diamond necklace barked, not even bothering to make eye contact. "Of course, ma'am." Clara's voice was practically robotic by now, just running on professional autopilot. That's when she spotted him. A boy, maybe around 8 years old, sitting all by himself at table number 7. While everyone else was schmoozing and laughing, he was just staring at his empty plate with this look that Clara knew all too well. The look of someone trying to disappear. Metal leg braces gleamed under the chandelier lights as he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Clara glanced around, trying to figure out where his parents were. A woman in scrubs, clearly a nurse, was standing about 10 feet away, glued to her phone. The boy looked up at her, then over at the buffet, then back down at his plate again. "Excuse me," Clara said, approaching the nurse. "That little boy at table 7? Does he need anything?" "He's fine." The nurse didn't even bother to look up from her screen. "He has to wait." "Wait for what?" "Everyone else is chowing down." "Wait for his father." "Those are my instructions." The nurse's tone was as cold as ice. "We don't deviate from the schedule." Clara felt a knot tighten in her chest. She'd grown up with a mom whose diabetes required super strict meal times. She understood medical protocols. But this wasn't about health, this was about control. She looked back at the boy. He was watching the other kids at nearby tables, laughing with their parents and eating cake. His small hands were gripping the edge of his plate. "Don't," the nurse warned, catching Clara's glance. "Stay in your lane." Clara had never been very good at staying in her lane. She went back to the buffet station and ladled up a bowl of butternut squash soup. Warm, simple, and safe for pretty much any dietary restriction. She also grabbed a soft roll. Her supervisor was busy bickering with the kitchen staff about the dessert timing. "This kid needs this," Clara muttered to herself. She crossed the ballroom floor with a purpose, her heart pounding in her chest. The nurse looked up a little too late. "Hi there." Clara set the soup down and crouched beside the boy's chair, getting down to his eye level. "I'm Clara. I noticed you might be hungry, and this soup is really good. My mom makes one just like it." The boy stared at her, his eyes wide with surprise. Up close, she could see how skinny he was, how carefully he held himself, like he was afraid of taking up too much space. "I'm Matteo," he whispered. "That's a great name. Italian." He nodded, a tiny smile flickering across his face. "Well, Matteo, I think you should eat while it's hot. Soup's always better that way." Clara pushed the bowl closer to him. "Do you need any help? Or are you good?" "I'm good." His voice sounded a little stronger now. The nurse materialized beside them like a storm cloud. "What do you think you're doing?" Clara stood up slowly, keeping her body between the nurse and the boy. "I'm doing my job, serving food. Not to him, not without authorization. He's a child at a charity dinner. He's hungry. I gave him soup." Clara's voice stayed calm, but her pulse was racing. "That's literally what I'm here to do. Do you have any idea who his father is?" "I don't care if his father is the president. That boy needs to eat." Behind her, she heard the quiet clink of a spoon against a bowl. Matteo had started eating. The nurse's face went from white to red in a heartbeat. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." "Maybe, but at least a kid gets dinner." All the commotion had started to draw attention. Clara saw her supervisor, Michael, pushing through the crowd, his face already set in an apologetic grimace. Behind him was the event coordinator, Patricia Holbrook, a woman who wore authority like armor. "What is going on here?" Patricia's voice could cut glass. The nurse jumped in immediately. This server violated direct orders regarding VIP protocol. Mr. Duca specifically instructed. I gave a hungry child some soup. Clara interrupted. That's it. Patricia's expression went from annoyed to absolutely horrified. You served Lorenzo Duca's son without clearance? The name didn't mean anything to Clara, but the reaction in the room told her everything she needed to know. Conversation just stopped. People took a step back. Even the band seemed to play a little quieter. Who's Lorenzo Duca? Clara asked. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia grabbed Clara's arm, dragging her away from the table. You're done. Collect your things and leave. Now, for feeding a kid? For breaking protocol with one of the most important families in Chicago. Do you understand what you've done? Clara looked back at Matteo. He was eating the soup slowly, carefully, but there was something different about him now. He was sitting up a little straighter. The invisible weight seemed a little lighter. Yeah, Clara said quietly. I fed a hungry child. If that gets me fired, then I don't want to work here anyway. She yanked off her apron. The name tag with Clara Martinez, Evergreen Catering, catching the light one last time. Michael wouldn't meet her eyes. The other servers looked away, but Matteo watched her, and for just a second he smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. Clara smiled back. Enjoy your soup, Matteo. As security escorted her out through the service entrance, Clara tried to figure out how she was going to make next month's rent. Her mother's medication wasn't cheap, and losing this catering gig meant losing 20% of her income. The Chicago night air hit her face, cold and sharp. She'd taken the blue line to get here, and the next train wasn't coming for another 30 minutes. Clara sat down on the concrete steps and dropped her head into her hands. What had she been thinking? She'd been thinking about the look in that little boy's eyes. The way he'd said his own name so quietly, like he wasn't even sure he was allowed to exist. She'd been thinking about kindness, about doing what was right instead of what was safe. And now she was unemployed. Clara laughed bitterly into the night. At least Matteo got his soup. She had no idea that in exactly 12 hours, 3 black SUVs would pull up to the diner where she worked her morning shift. She had no idea that Lorenzo Duca would walk through those doors, bringing his silent power and his desperate son. She had no idea that one bowl of soup was about to change everything. But for now, Clara Martinez sat on cold concrete steps, counting her losses and trying not to cry. The Bluebird Diner reeked of burnt coffee and bacon grease at 6 in the morning. Clara tied her apron with practiced ease, trying to force last night's disaster out of her mind. She'd barely slept, running numbers in her head until the sun came up. Losing the catering gig stung, but she still had this job, working the breakfast shift at the diner on West Madison. You look like hell, said Tommy the cook, sliding a plate of hash browns across the counter. Thanks, Tommy. You're a real confidence booster. I'm serious. You okay? Clara grabbed the coffee pot. Just a rough night. I'll be fine. The morning rush was light. A few construction workers, an elderly couple who came in every Tuesday, a businessman glued to his laptop. Normal, predictable, safe. That's when the first SUV pulled up. Then the second, then the third. All black, all identical, all expensive enough to be completely out of place in this neighborhood. Tommy stopped flipping pancakes. Clara, you expecting trouble? Why would I be? The words caught in her throat. The diner door swung open. 2 men in dark suits walked in first, their eyes scanning the room with professional precision. They weren't cops. They were something else entirely, something that made every instinct Clara had scream danger. Then he walked in. Lorenzo Duca was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with a face that looked like it belonged on a Roman coin, all sharp angles and controlled power. His charcoal suit probably cost more than Clara made in 6 months. But it was his eyes that really got to her. Dark, calculating, and completely unreadable. The diner went silent. The construction workers suddenly found their plates incredibly fascinating. The elderly woman clutched her husband's hand. Lorenzo's gaze swept across the room and landed on Clara like a spotlight. Clara Martinez. It wasn't a question. Her heart was pounding against her ribs. "That's me. We need to talk." His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it carried complete authority. "I'm working." "Not anymore." Lorenzo pulled out his wallet, took out what looked like several $100 bills, and laid them on the counter. "For her time," he said to Tommy, who looked like he was about to pass out. "Sir, I don't know what this is about, but—" Lorenzo cut him off. "My son refused to eat anything last night after you left." Clara blinked. "What? The soup you gave him? That was the only thing he ate at the gala. After they fired you, he stopped eating completely." Lorenzo's face remained neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes. "This morning he still won't eat. He asked for the nice lady who gave him soup." The construction workers were very slowly inching their way toward the door. "Mr. Duca, I'm sorry your son won't eat, but I just gave him some soup. Any nurse or caregiver can." "No." The word was absolute. "They can't. Believe me, I've tried everything. Sonia and the entire staff couldn't get him to take a single bite this morning. But he keeps asking for you." Clara's mind was racing. This didn't make any sense. "Where is he now?" Lorenzo stepped aside, and Clara saw Matteo standing in the doorway, partially hidden behind his father's leg. He was wearing a different set of leg braces today. These ones were dark blue. His small hand was clutching Lorenzo's jacket. Their eyes met, and Matteo's face lit up. "See." The boy's voice was soft but urgent. "I told you it was her." Something twisted in Clara's chest. She set down the coffee pot and walked around the counter, crouching down like she had last night. "Hey, Matteo, how's the soup sitting?" "Good." He hesitated. "Are you still mad they fired you?" "Nah, these things happen." "Because of me?" "No, sweetheart. Because adults sometimes make dumb decisions. That's not your fault." Lorenzo watched this exchange with the intensity of someone trying to decipher a foreign language. "Miss Martinez," he said, pulling her attention back to him. "I'm offering you a position, personal attendant to my son. You'll live on the estate, full security, housing included. The salary is $200,000 a year." Clara's knees almost buckled. That was more than she made in 5 years. "You want me to be his nanny?" "I want you to be whatever helps him eat, sleep, live." For just a second, Lorenzo's carefully constructed mask cracked, and Clara caught a glimpse of something raw underneath. "He has cerebral palsy. Mild but enough. Most people treat him like he's broken. You treated him like he was human. He is human. Then accept the position." Every logical part of Clara's brain was screaming, "No." Lorenzo Duca wasn't just wealthy. The reaction in the diner told her he was dangerous, powerful in ways that had nothing to do with money. Taking this job meant stepping into a world she didn't understand. "I can't," she said quietly. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "Name your price." "It's not about money, Mr. Duca. I don't know anything about your world, but I know enough to be scared of it. I'm just a waitress. I can't." "She's nice to me." Matteo's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through everything. "Papa, she's nice to me. She doesn't look at my legs first. She looks at my face." Lorenzo's entire body went still. For a moment, the dangerous man in the expensive suit disappeared, and Clara saw just a father, a desperate, exhausted father who'd run out of options. "Please," Lorenzo said, and the word sounded like it cost him everything. 1 week trial basis. If it doesn't work, you walk away. No consequences. Clara looked at Matteo, who was watching her with hope that broke her heart. She thought about her mother's medical bills, her student loans, the eviction notice she'd received last week. She thought about kindness, about what was right versus what was safe. 1 week, Clara heard herself say. "But I have conditions." Lorenzo's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise, maybe even a little respect. "Name them." "I'm not a prisoner. I can leave if I want. And if anyone mistreats that boy while I'm there, I'm gone. No matter how much you pay me." A ghost of a smile touched Lorenzo's lips. "Agreed." Mateo's face broke into a grin so wide it transformed him. Clara untied her apron for the second time in 12 hours, wondering what kind of life she'd just agreed to. Tommy watched from behind the counter, his face pale. "Clara, are you sure?" "No," she admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." As Lorenzo's men escorted her to the SUV, Clara caught her reflection in the diner window. She looked terrified. She looked alive. The Duca estate was hidden behind iron gates in Lake Forest, about 40 minutes north of Chicago. Clara pressed her face against the SUV window as they drove through manicured gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. The main house was a modern fortress, all glass, steel, and stone, beautiful and cold. "Holy crap," she whispered. One of Lorenzo's men, Marco, cracked a smile. "Wait until you see the inside." Inside was even worse. Marble floors reflected everything like mirrors. Art that probably cost millions hung on walls the color of winter. Everything was pristine, perfect, and utterly lifeless. Clara had been in museums that felt warmer than this place. Lorenzo led them down a hallway to a study lined with books that looked like they'd never been touched. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "Sit. We need to discuss the details." Clara sat down. Mateo climbed into the chair next to her, his legs swinging slightly. The braces clicked softly. Lorenzo pulled out a folder. "The terms are as follows: $200,000 annually, paid monthly, private room in the East Wing with a full bathroom and sitting area. You'll have access to the entire estate except for my personal office and the security wing. No questions about my business. Ever." "I wasn't planning on asking." "Good." Lorenzo's eyes were unreadable. "You'll accompany Mateo to his physical therapy sessions, doctor's appointments, and any social functions he attends. You're responsible for his meals, his schedule, and his general well-being." "What about school?" "He's homeschooled. His tutor, Mrs. Patterson, handles his education. You won't interfere with that." Clara nodded slowly. "What about the nursing staff?" "Sonia and the nursing staff are no longer your concern." Lorenzo's voice went cold. "In fact, I need you to wait here for a moment." He stood up and left the room. Clara heard him speaking to someone in Italian, his voice sharp with authority. "What's happening?" Clara whispered to Mateo. The boy's eyes went wide. "Papa sounds angry." Footsteps echoed in the hallway, multiple people. Lorenzo returned, followed by 5 people in medical scrubs, including Sonia, whose expression went from confused to murderous when she saw Clara. "You've got to be kidding me," Sonia spat. "You hired her." "I did." Lorenzo's voice was like ice. "And now I'm firing all of you." The room exploded. "Mr. Duca, I've worked for your family for 6 years. This is insane. We're certified professionals. She's a goddamn waitress." Lorenzo raised one hand. Silence fell like a guillotine. "My son has been in your care for 3 years," Lorenzo said quietly. "In that time, I've watched him withdraw, stop speaking, stop engaging with the world. You treated him like a medical condition instead of a child. We followed every protocol." Sonia started. "You followed protocols that made him miserable." Lorenzo's voice could cut stone. "You withheld food as a control mechanism. You spoke about him like he wasn't in the room. You made him feel like a burden." Clara's stomach dropped. She hadn't realized how bad it was. Yesterday, a stranger showed him basic kindness, and for the first time in months, he smiled. Lorenzo looked at each staff member in turn. "If my son eats when she's here, then she's the only one who stays. The rest of you are done. Marco will escort you out. You'll receive 2 months severance. Sign the NDAs and we're finished." Sonia's face went purple. "You're making a massive mistake. She has no training, no experience. She has something you don't. She sees him as a person." Lorenzo's face was carved granite. "Get out of my house." Marco and 2 other security men stepped forward. The message was clear. As the staff filed out, Sonia stopped in front of Clara. "This won't last," she hissed. "When you fail, and you will, don't come crying to me." Clara met her eyes. "I won't fail. You don't even know what you've walked into. Sonia's smile was vicious. But you will. After they left, the silence in the study was deafening. Clara's hands were shaking. She just watched a man fire people like they were nothing. No warning, no second chances, just gone. Papa? Mateo's voice was small. Is Sonia really not coming back? Really? Lorenzo's expression softened slightly. Is that okay? Mateo looked at Clara, then back at his father. Yes. Lorenzo returned to his desk and pulled out a contract. Miss Martinez, I need to be clear about something. The world I operate in is not kind. My enemies will see you as a weakness. Your association with this family puts you at risk. What kind of risk? The kind I have an entire security team to prevent. He pushed the contract across the desk. But you need to understand, once you sign this, you're under my protection. That protection comes with rules. You don't talk to the press. You don't discuss anything you see or hear in this house. And if anyone threatens you, you come directly to me. Clara stared at the contract. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. The medical bills, the insulin she could barely afford, the worry lines that had etched themselves deep over the past year. My mom, Clara said quietly. She has diabetes. She lives in Pilsen. If I take this job, can you make sure she's taken care of? Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. I'll have a private nurse check on her twice a week. Her medications will be covered. And if there's an emergency, my people will respond immediately. Why would you do that? Because you're asking for the right things. Lorenzo's expression remained unreadable. You're not asking for cars or jewelry. You're asking me to protect your mother. That tells me what kind of person you are. Clara picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the signature line. Once more, Lorenzo asked, Are you certain? She looked at Mateo, who was watching her with those hopeful eyes. She thought about the empty coldness of this house. The way the boy's entire face had lit up over a bowl of soup. She thought about kindness, about purpose, about making a difference in one small life. Clara signed her name. I'm certain. Lorenzo nodded once, then extended his hand. When Clara shook it, his grip was firm, businesslike, but she felt the weight of the promise in it. Welcome to the family, Miss Martinez. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a door closing behind her, one she couldn't reopen. Mateo grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. Can we have lunch now? I'm hungry. Clara laughed despite her nerves. Yeah, kiddo, let's get you some food. As she led Mateo out of the study, Clara glanced back. Lorenzo was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Part relief, part fear, part something else entirely. Outside, through the massive windows, she could see Sonia and the other nurses being escorted to their cars. Sonia looked back at the house one last time, her face twisted with rage. Clara shivered. She'd just made powerful enemies, and she'd been here less than an hour. Clara's room was bigger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. A king-sized bed with sheets that probably had a thread count higher than her credit score. A marble bathroom with a tub you could swim in. Everything perfectly arranged, perfectly lifeless. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and tried to wrap her head around what she'd just done. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Martinez. A woman's voice, clipped and professional. I'm Mrs. Chun, the house manager. Mr. Duca asked me to show you around and get you settled. Clara opened the door. Mrs. Chun was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that could freeze water. Thank you, Clara said. I appreciate. Let me be clear. Mrs. Chun's smile was made of ice. I've worked for the Duca family for 15 years. I've seen people like you come and go. You'll last 2 weeks, maybe 3, before you realize you're in over your head. Clara blinked. Excuse me? You fired 5 trained professionals with decades of combined experience. You're a waitress playing nurse. The staff is not pleased. I didn't fire anyone. Mr. Duca made a rash decision because a child smiled. Mrs. Chun's expression was pure condescension. We'll see how long that smile lasts when reality sets in. Lunch is at noon in the East dining room. Don't be late. She left before Clara could say a word. Great. Not even an hour in and she'd already made more enemies. Clara changed into the only other clothes she had with her, jeans and a clean t-shirt, and tried to find her way through the maze of hallways. Everything looked the same. Marble, glass, art, emptiness. She finally stumbled upon what looked like a dining room. A long table that could seat 20 set for one. A single place setting in the middle so formal it looked like a museum display. This is insane, Clara muttered. Clara! She turned around to see Mateo coming down the hallway, his leg braces clicking against the floor. He was moving faster than she expected. His face lit up with excitement. But he was also off balance, leaning too far forward. Clara reacted without even thinking, catching him just as he stumbled. Whoa, easy there, speed racer. She steadied him, her hands on his shoulders. You trying to break a world record? Mateo giggled, actually giggled. I wanted to find you. Well, you found me. Nice driving. Clara looked at his braces, then at his flushed face. But maybe we take it a little slower in the hallways. Yeah, these floors are slippery. Mrs. Chun says I have to use my wheelchair inside. What do you want to do? Mateo stared at her like she'd asked him to solve some complex math problem in a foreign language. What? I asked what you want to do. Do you want the wheelchair? Or do you want to walk? I want to walk. But it hurts sometimes. Then walk when it doesn't hurt. And use the chair when he needs to. You're the boss of your own body, kiddo. Mateo's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Clara grinned. Now, I heard something about lunch. Please tell me you eat more than just soup. I like grilled cheese. A man of excellent taste. Come on, let's see if this fancy kitchen knows how to make normal people food. She started to walk toward what she hoped was the kitchen, but Mateo grabbed her hand. Clara, are you really staying? The vulnerability in his voice broke her heart. Yeah, Mateo, I'm really staying. Promise. Promise. The kitchen was like something out of a cooking show. All stainless steel and granite counters. A chef in whites looked up from chopping vegetables, his expression immediately shifting to suspicion. Can I help you? His tone suggested he'd rather not. This is Mateo, and he would like a grilled cheese for lunch. Is that something you can make? Or should I handle it? The chef's face tightened. I'm preparing a nutritionally balanced lunch following the dietary plan Mrs. Chin provided. That sounds great, but does that plan include grilled cheese? It includes pan-seared salmon with steamed vegetables. Clara looked at Mateo, who made a face. How about this? She said to the chef. You make your salmon and I'll make the grilled cheese. Then Mateo can choose. Fair, I don't think. Perfect. Where's your cheese? The chef looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, but he gestured toward the industrial refrigerator. Clara found butter, cheddar, and bread and got to work. The kitchen staff watched her like she was juggling knives. So, Mateo, Clara said while buttering bread. What do you do for fun around here? I read. And I watch movies. What kind of movies? Superhero ones. Papa says they're too violent, but I like them anyway. Smart kid. Which superhero is the best? Spider-Man. Because he's just a regular person who tries to help people. Clara flipped the sandwich. You know what? I think you and Spider-Man have a lot in common. I can't climb walls. No, but you're brave. You keep going even when things are hard. That's pretty heroic. Mateo went quiet, processing this. Then, so softly she almost missed it. Nobody ever said that before. Clara's throat tightened. She focused on plating the sandwich, cutting it into triangles the way her mom used to. Well, I'm saying it now. She carried the plate to the dining room, Mateo following. Instead of the formal table, she found a smaller breakfast nook with windows overlooking the garden. Here, much better than that museum out there. Mateo climbed into a chair, eyeing the sandwich. It looks perfect. Taste it first. I might have burned it. He took a bite, chewed, and smiled. It's really good. Excellent. Dig in. That's when Clara felt it, the weight of someone watching. She turned to find Lorenzo standing in the doorway, partially hidden by shadow. His expression was completely neutral, but his eyes tracked every movement. How long had he been there? Clara met his gaze, refusing to look away. After a long moment, Lorenzo gave the smallest nod and disappeared back into the hallway. Papa watches sometimes, Matteo said through a mouthful of sandwich. He thinks I don't notice. He loves you. That's what parents do. He's busy a lot. Busy people still love their kids. Matteo considered this. You're not scared of him. Should I be? Everyone else is. Clara watched Matteo take another bite, some color finally returning to his cheeks. Well, I'm not everyone else. As Matteo finished his lunch, actually finished it without anyone forcing him, Clara heard whispers from the hallway. Staff passing by, watching, judging. Let them watch. She'd signed a contract, made a promise to a little boy who'd been treated like he was broken. Whatever came next, suspicious staff, cold hallways, dangerous enemies, she'd handle it. Because for the first time in years, Clara felt like she was doing something that mattered. Matteo pushed his empty plate away and smiled at her. Can we do this again tomorrow, kiddo? Clara said. We're doing this every day. By day 4, Matteo was a different child. Clara watched him at breakfast, chattering about a book he'd read, actually using his hands to gesture as he described the plot. 3 days ago he'd barely whispered. Now he was animated, alive. And then the dragon turned out to be protecting the village the whole time, not attacking it. So the night felt really bad. And Clara, are you listening? She smiled. Every word. The night felt bad because he made assumptions. Exactly. Matteo took a big bite of scrambled eggs. Mrs. Patterson says I should write my own story. Do you think I could? I think you could write 10 stories. From across the breakfast nook, Mrs. Chin watched with barely concealed shock. The boy who'd refused to eat for months was on his second helping. Mr. Duca would like to see you, Mrs. Chin said stiffly. In his study. Now Clara's stomach dropped. Is something wrong? He didn't say. Matteo grabbed Clara's hand. You'll come back, right? Of course. Finish your breakfast. I'll be 10 minutes. Lorenzo's study felt different in daylight. Less fortress, more office. He stood at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the grounds. Another man sat in the corner, older, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Miss Martinez, Lorenzo said without turning. This is Alberto Rossi, my consigliere, my advisor. Lawyer. Alberto corrected with a slight smile. Let's keep it professional. Clara nodded carefully. She'd seen enough movies to know what consigliere really meant. Alberto has questions, Lorenzo said. I need you to answer them honestly. Her pulse quickened. Okay. Alberto pulled out a file. Clara Maria Martinez. Born in Chicago, Pilsen neighborhood. Father deceased when you were 12. Mother Rosa Martinez, type 2 diabetic. You attended Roosevelt University, dropped out after 2 years due to financial issues. Currently working or you were 2 jobs. No criminal record, no connections to any rival families. He looked up. You're exactly what you appear to be. Is that a problem? Clara asked. On the contrary, it's refreshing. Alberto closed the file. But I had to be sure. Your sudden appearance raised questions. Mr. Duca's enemies would love to plant someone in his household. I'm not a plant. I'm a waitress who gave a kid some soup. And now you're much more than that. Alberto's expression was serious. Have you received any unusual contact in the past few days? Calls? Messages, people following you? Clara hesitated. Actually, yes. Sonia, the fired nurse. She called yesterday. Lorenzo's entire body tensed. What did she say? She wants to meet. Says she has information about the family that I need to know for Matteo's safety. I haven't responded. Don't. Lorenzo's voice was sharp. Block her number. If she approaches you in person, you call security immediately. Understood. You think she's dangerous? I think she's angry and potentially reckless. That makes her dangerous. Alberto, I'll have someone monitor her communications. See who she's talking to. He nodded to Clara. You did the right thing not responding. Keep it that way. After Alberto left, Lorenzo finally turned to face her. Matteo requested something this morning. What? He wants you to accompany him to his physical therapy session this afternoon. He's never asked anyone to come before. Usually, he fights us to get him there. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. Of course I'll go. Dr. Kim, his therapist, will meet you both at 3. Marco will drive you. Lorenzo paused. Miss Martinez. Clara, I need you to understand something. What you're doing for my son, I can't adequately express. He trailed off, the most emotion she'd seen from him. For a moment, the dangerous crime boss disappeared, and she saw just a father who'd watched his child suffer. You don't have to express anything, Clara said quietly. Mateo's a great kid. I'm just giving him what he deserves. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. You really believe that, don't you? That it's simple, isn't it? In my world, nothing is simple. The therapy center was surprisingly normal, colorful walls, exercise equipment, cheerful staff. Dr. Kim was a Korean woman in her 30s with kind eyes and strong hands. So, you're the one we've been hearing about? Dr. Kim said, shaking Clara's hand. Mateo hasn't stopped talking about you. Mateo, already on the exercise mat, waved enthusiastically. Clara's here. I see that. Ready to work? For the next hour, Clara watched Mateo push through exercises that looked excruciating. Leg stretches, resistance training, balance work. He gritted his teeth, but never complained. Between sets, he looked at Clara, checking if she was still there. You're doing amazing, Clara said when he finished a particularly difficult stretch. It hurts. I know, but look how much stronger you're getting. Dr. Kim pulled Clara aside while Mateo rested. I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. I've worked with him for 2 years. This is the most engaged I've ever seen him. I'm just treating him normally. That's not as common as you'd think. Dr. Kim glanced at Mateo. Kids with disabilities often get smothered or ignored. You're just being you. You're just there. Present. It matters more than you know. On the drive back, Mateo fell asleep in the SUV, exhausted from therapy. Clara watched the Chicago suburbs blur past, her phone buzzing in her pocket. Another text from Sonia. *, you're making a mistake. He's not who you think he is. Meet me for Mateo's sake. *, Clara deleted it without responding. When they arrived at the estate, Lorenzo was waiting. He looked at his sleeping son, something soft crossing his face. He worked hard today, Clara said quietly. Dr. Kim says he's making real progress. Lorenzo carefully lifted Mateo from the car, the boy barely stirring. Alberto completed his investigation. You're clear. No red flags. That's good. It is. Lorenzo adjusted Mateo in his arms. It means you're exactly what you claim to be. In my experience, that's rare. Maybe you're looking in the wrong places. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Maybe I am. As Lorenzo carried Mateo inside, Clara's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a voicemail from an unknown number. She listened, her blood running cold. Sonia's voice, sharp and venomous. You think ignoring me will work? I know things, Clara. Things about Lorenzo Duca that would make you run. Things about why Mateo's really sick. Call me back, or I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you're working for. You have 24 hours. Clara stood in the driveway, the phone shaking in her hand. What did Sonia know? And was it the truth or just the desperate threats of someone who'd lost everything? She looked up at the massive house, at the window where she could see Lorenzo settling Mateo into bed, patient and gentle. Whatever Sonia thought she knew, Clara wasn't interested. She deleted the voicemail and went inside. But the words stayed with her. Things about why Mateo's really sick. What did that mean? Clara knew something was wrong when Mateo wasn't in his room at breakfast time. Mrs. Chin. She found the house manager in the hallway. Where's Mateo? He's always up by 7 a.m. Dr. Kim rescheduled his therapy to 8 o'clock. I assumed you knew. Mrs. Chin's smile was pure ice. The car left 10 minutes ago. What? I was supposed to go with him. Were you? I didn't receive that memo. Perhaps there was a miscommunication. Clara's hands clenched. There was no miscommunication. You knew I go with him. I'm very busy, Miss Martinez. If you have concerns, Take them to Mr. Duca. Mrs. Chin brushed past her. Excuse me. Clara pulled out her phone and called Marco. Yeah, we're at Dr. Kim's, Marco said. Kid keeps asking where you are. You want me to turn around? No, the session's already started. Is he okay? Upset, but he'll manage. What happened? Staff happened. Clara hung up, fury burning in her chest. It was the third miscommunication in 2 days. Yesterday, her laundry had been accidentally mixed with someone else's, ruining her favorite shirt. The day before, she'd been told Lorenzo wanted to see her urgently, only to find a study empty and him annoyed by the interruption during a meeting. The staff was sabotaging her, quietly, cleverly, and completely deniably. Clara found Matteo when he returned, his face streaked with tears. You weren't there, he said, voice breaking. You promised you'd always be there. I know, buddy. I'm so sorry. There was a mix-up with the schedule. You left me. The words hit like a punch. Matteo, no. I would never leave you. Someone gave me the wrong information. That's not the same thing. But the trust in his eyes had cracked just slightly. It would take time to repair. That afternoon, Lorenzo summoned her to his study. Alberto was there too, his expression grave. There have been complaints, Lorenzo said without preamble. Staff members concerned about your unconventional approach to Matteo's care. Clara's stomach dropped. What kind of complaints? That you're undermining established routines, ignoring medical protocols, being, quote, unprofessional. Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. Mrs. Chin submitted a formal report this morning. Of course, she did. Clara's voice was sharp. Did that report mention that she deliberately kept me from Matteo's therapy session? That he was upset because she made sure I wasn't there? Alberto leaned forward. Can you prove that? Can she prove I'm unprofessional? Clara shot back. Or is this just about people resenting that I don't bow and scrape to them? Clara, Lorenzo's voice carried a warning. These people have worked for my family for years. They deserve respect, and I deserve not to be sabotaged. Clara stood her ground. Matteo is thriving. You've seen it yourself. But your staff would rather maintain their control than see him happy. The silence was heavy. Lorenzo and Alberto exchanged a look. Handle it, Lorenzo said finally to Alberto. Quietly, I want to know who's behind this. After Alberto left, Lorenzo gestured for Clara to sit. Tonight we're having dinner. Family dinner. You and Matteo will join me in the main dining room at 7 p.m. I don't think that's. It wasn't a request. His tone softened slightly. Matteo asked if he could eat with us. He's never asked for anyone to join family meals before. I'm honoring that request. The main dining room was as intimidating as Clara expected. Crystal chandeliers, paintings worth millions, a table that could seat 30. 3 place settings were arranged at one end, Lorenzo at the head, Matteo to his right, Clara to his left. Staff served the meal in complete silence. Roasted chicken, vegetables, potatoes, everything perfect, everything cold. Lorenzo ate mechanically, his attention on his phone. Matteo picked at his food, the earlier joy completely gone. The silence pressed down like a weight. Clara couldn't take it anymore. So, Matteo, she said, her voice too loud in the quiet. Tell your dad about the story you're writing. Matteo looked up, startled. Lorenzo didn't even glance away from his phone. It's just a story, Matteo mumbled. It's not just anything. It's about a dragon, right? Tell him. Matteo glanced at his father, then back down. Papa's busy. Clara looked at Lorenzo, who was still scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. She recognized that look. A man drowning in responsibilities, shutting out everything else. Matteo, sit up a bit, Clara said gently. You'll breathe better. Matteo straightened, but he was hunched over his plate, trying to make himself small. Clara reached over and gently touched his shoulder. Not like you're in trouble, like you're a king at his own table. She demonstrated, shoulders back, but relaxed. There you go. Matteo adjusted his posture, and something shifted. He looked less like a burden and more like a boy having dinner. The dragon is misunderstood, Matteo said quietly. Everyone thinks he's mean, but he's just lonely. Clara smiled. I like that. What happens to him? Or a knight comes to fight him, but then realizes the dragon is protecting something. So they become friends instead. Plot twist. I love it. For the first time, Matteo laughed. A real laugh that echoed in the cavernous room. Lorenzo's phone lowered. He was watching them, his expression complicated. Clara caught his eye and saw something there. Confusion maybe, or longing. As if he was watching something he couldn't quite understand but desperately wanted to. Matteo reads constantly, Clara said to Lorenzo. Have you seen his book collection? Kid's going through novels faster than I can keep up. Lorenzo blinked. He's always working, Matteo said. It wasn't accusatory, just fact. The words hung in the air. Lorenzo's expression shifted. Something raw and painful crossing his face. What else happens in the story? Lorenzo asked quietly. Matteo's eyes widened. You want to know? For the next 20 minutes, Matteo talked about his story, his books, his therapy progress. Lorenzo listened, really listened, his phone face down on the table. Clara watched the two of them, father and son, finding their way back to each other across a table built for strangers. But she also saw Mrs. Chin watching from the doorway, her expression cold. And she saw how Lorenzo kept glancing at her. At Clara. Like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Like her presence was disrupting something he'd carefully built. Walls that kept him safe, kept him in control, kept him from feeling too much. After dinner, Lorenzo stopped her in the hallway. You changed everything in there, he said quietly. The way we eat, the way we talk, the way my son looks at me. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. His dark eyes held hers. But it terrifies me. He walked away before she could respond. Clara stood alone in the marble hallway, understanding finally clicking into place. Lorenzo wasn't just protecting Matteo. He was protecting himself from hope, from vulnerability, from the pain of trying and failing. And Clara had just walked in and shattered every carefully constructed wall. The parking garage in Wicker Park was empty except for 2 cars. Sonia's beat-up Honda and a black Mercedes with tinted windows. She checked her phone. 11:47 p.m. 3 minutes early. The Mercedes door opened. A man stepped out, tall, expensive suit, cold eyes. Vincent Caruso. Everyone in Chicago knew the name, even if they pretended not to. You're late, Vincent said, though she wasn't. I'm here, Sonia's voice was steady, but her hands shook. Do you have it? Vincent pulled an envelope from his jacket. 20,000 as promised. But I need something more substantial than schedules and medical records. I gave you everything. His therapy times, his routines, the layout of the East Wing, which we can't use without proper confirmation. Vincent's smile was razor-sharp. Lorenzo Duca's security is too tight. We need him vulnerable, distracted. What do you want from me? The new girl. Clara Martinez. Vincent leaned against his car. She's the weakness. Duca fired his entire staff for her. His son is attached to her. She's leverage. Sonia's jaw clenched. She's a nobody. A waitress. A nobody who has more access to that family than you ever did. Vincent's eyes glittered. I hear she even eats dinner with them now. Very intimate. The word hung in the air like poison. You want me to what? Kidnap her? God, no. Too messy. Vincent lit a cigarette. I want you to destroy her credibility. Make Lorenzo question her. Make the boy afraid of her. Drive her out. How? Use your imagination. You were a nurse. You know how to make things look concerning. He exhaled smoke. And if you need extra motivation, remember that Lorenzo Duca fired you without severance, without references. He blacklisted you from every medical facility in Chicago. You're toxic because of him. Sonia felt the rage burning fresh. 3 weeks ago she had a career. Now she couldn't even get hired at an urgent care clinic. What if she doesn't break? Then we move to plan B. But trust me, people like her always break. They're not built for our world. Vincent dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his shoe. You have 1 week. Make it count. He got back in the Mercedes and drove away, leaving Sonia alone with $20,000 and a heart full of venom. 2 days later, Clara was leaving the grocery store when Sonia appeared. We need to talk. Clara's blood went cold. She looked around the parking lot, Late afternoon, people everywhere. Safe enough. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Sonia blocked her path. I tried calling, texting. You ignored me. That was a mistake. Sonia, I don't know what you want, but I want you to quit. Clara stared at her. What? Quit. Walk away from the Duca house. Tell Lorenzo it's not working out. Go back to your little diner and forget any of this happened. Why would I do that? Sonia's smile was vicious. Because if you don't, I'll make your life a living hell. I have connections, Clara. Journalists who would love a story about how a waitress seduced a mob boss to get a six-figure job. About how Lorenzo Duca fired experienced medical professionals for a woman he's sleeping with. Clara's face went hot. That's a lie. Is it? You live in his house. You eat dinner with him. You're with his son constantly. Sonia stepped closer. Perception is reality. And I can make everyone perceive exactly what I want them to. Nobody will believe that, won't they? Single woman desperate for money. Suddenly living in luxury with a wealthy widower. The tabloids will eat it up. His enemies will use it. And Matteo, Sonia's voice dropped to a whisper. Poor Matteo will have to grow up hearing rumors about his father and the nanny. Clara's hands clenched around her grocery bags. You're threatening a child. I'm offering you a way out. Take it. No. Sonia's expression darkened. You have no idea what you're involved in. Lorenzo Duca isn't some misunderstood single dad. He's a criminal. His business destroys lives, and that sick boy you're so attached to. There are things about his condition you don't know, things Lorenzo doesn't want you to know. What things? Quit and I'll tell you. Stay and you'll find out the hard way. Sonia pulled out her phone, showing Clara a screen full of photos, doctored images of Clara and Lorenzo standing close, leaving restaurants, sitting in the garden. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough to fuel speculation. Where did you get those? I have friends who watch the estate, friends who can make these photos go viral in an hour. Sonia's thumb hovered over the send button. Or you can walk away right now. Your choice. Clara looked at the photos, her stomach churning. They were manipulated, angles changed, context removed, but convincing enough to destroy reputations. If you release those, Clara said quietly, Lorenzo will come after you. Let him try. I'm not afraid of Lorenzo Duca. You should be. Is that a threat? No, it's a warning. Clara met Sonia's eyes. I don't know what you think you'll gain from this, but it won't work. I'm not quitting because you're bitter about being fired. This isn't about being bitter. Yes, it is. You failed that boy. You treated him like a burden and got caught. Now you want to blame me for your mistakes. Clara stepped closer. Here's the translation and expanded version. Okay, here we go. And use the chair when it does. You're the boss of your own body, kiddo. This encouragement, so simple and direct, hung in the air like a promise. It was a declaration of Matteo's autonomy, a concept that seemed foreign to him. A boy whose life felt dictated by illness and the rigid structure imposed by those around him. It was Clara, though, who reminded him that even within limitations, he held power over himself. Matteo's eyes widened, sparkling with a blend of surprise and burgeoning hope. Really? Really? The question tumbled out, tinged with disbelief. He sought confirmation, a tangible reassurance that what he'd heard was indeed true. It was as if he were testing the very boundaries of what he believed to be possible. Clara grinned, a warm, genuine smile that radiated confidence and affection. Now, I heard something about lunch. Please tell me you eat more than just soup. Her tone was light, playful, yet underscored with a genuine concern for his well-being. The inquiry about his diet wasn't merely polite conversation. It was a signal that she intended to see beyond the surface, to understand his needs and preferences. I like grilled cheese. Matteo's voice was small, almost hesitant, as if unsure whether his preference would be met with approval. The simple declaration of a childhood favorite seemed laden with a deeper longing for normalcy, for the uncomplicated joys that had been overshadowed by his health struggles. A man of excellent taste. Clara's response was immediate and enthusiastic, validating Matteo's choice and reinforcing the idea that his likes and dislikes held value. It was a subtle way of building his confidence, letting him know that she saw him not as a patient but as an individual with his own personality and opinions. "Come on, let's see if this fancy kitchen knows how to make normal people food." Her words were laced with a touch of playful rebellion, a hint that she wasn't intimidated by the opulence of the Duca mansion. It was as if she were inviting Matteo to join her in a light-hearted challenge against the stifling formality of his surroundings. She started to walk toward what she hoped was the kitchen, her steps purposeful, driven by a desire to fulfill Matteo's simple request. But Matteo grabbed her hand, his small fingers tightening around hers with an unexpected urgency. "Clara, are you really staying?" The vulnerability in his voice broke her heart. The question, raw and unfiltered, laid bare his deepest fear: abandonment. It was a plea for reassurance, a desperate hope that she wouldn't become just another fleeting presence in his life. "Yeah, Matteo, I'm really staying." Clara's response was immediate and unwavering, her voice filled with a conviction that mirrored the depth of her commitment. It was more than just words. It was a promise etched in sincerity. Promise. Matteo's repetition of the word was soft, almost a whisper, as if he needed to hear it again to fully absorb its meaning. It was a fragile echo of hope, a lifeline in the sea of his uncertainty. The kitchen was like something from a cooking show, a gleaming expanse of culinary perfection. All stainless steel and granite counters reflected the bright overhead lights, creating an atmosphere that felt sterile and impersonal. A chef in whites, a figure of culinary authority, looked up from chopping vegetables, his expression immediately shifting to suspicion. The very air seemed to bristle with his disapproval. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested he'd rather not. The question hung in the air, laced with a subtle hostility that betrayed his true feelings. It was a clear indication that Clara's presence was unwelcome, that she was an intrusion into his meticulously ordered domain. This is Matteo, and he would like a grilled cheese for lunch." Clara's voice carried a note of determined cheerfulness, attempting to diffuse the chef's obvious animosity. "Is that something you can make? Or should I handle it?" The question was posed with a delicate balance of politeness and defiance, a subtle challenge to his authority. She wasn't backing down, but she wasn't trying to escalate the situation either. The chef's face tightened, his features hardening into a mask of disapproval. "I'm preparing a nutritionally balanced lunch following the dietary plan Mrs. Chin provided." His words were delivered with an air of rigid adherence to protocol, a clear indication that his priorities lay with the established rules rather than the individual needs of the child. It was a defense against the perceived disruption of his routine, a way of asserting his control over the situation. "That sounds great, but does that plan include grilled cheese?" Clara's question was direct, yet tinged with a hint of playful sarcasm. She wasn't dismissing the importance of a balanced diet, but she was subtly challenging the inflexibility of the system. It was a reminder that sometimes the simplest pleasures are just as important as nutritional guidelines. "It includes pan-seared salmon with steamed vegetables." The chef's response was delivered with an air of finality, as if the matter were closed. It was a stark contrast to Matteo's simple request, highlighting the disconnect between the child's desires and the restrictive environment in which he lived. Clara looked at Matteo, who made a face, his expression conveying a clear lack of enthusiasm for the proposed meal. The salmon and steamed vegetables, while undoubtedly nutritious, held little appeal for a boy who simply wanted a grilled cheese sandwich. "How about this?" she said to the chef, her voice calm and reasonable. "You make your salmon and I'll make the grilled cheese. Then Matteo can choose." It was a compromise, a way of satisfying both the nutritional requirements and Matteo's personal preference. It was a solution that acknowledged the validity of both perspectives, allowing for a balance between health and happiness. "Fair, I don't think." The chef's response was grudging, his tone laced with resentment. He clearly didn't approve of the compromise, viewing it as a challenge to his authority and a deviation from the established protocol. "Perfect. Where's your cheese?" Clara's enthusiasm was infectious, her determination unwavering. She wasn't going to let the chef's disapproval deter her from fulfilling Matteo's simple request. The chef looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, his face contorted in a grimace of distaste. But he gestured toward the industrial refrigerator, a massive appliance that hummed with the cold efficiency of a professional kitchen. Clara found butter, cheddar, and bread and got to work. The kitchen staff watched her like she was juggling knives, their eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Her presence was clearly an anomaly, a disruption to the smooth, predictable rhythm of their workday. "So, Matteo," Clara said while buttering bread, her voice warm and conversational, "what do you do for fun around here?" She was making an effort to connect with him, to draw him out of his shell and engage him in a normal, lighthearted conversation. "I read, and I watch movies." Matteo's response was simple and direct, revealing his quiet, introspective nature. He sought solace in stories, finding escape and entertainment in the worlds created by books and films. "What kind of movies?" Clara's inquiry was gentle, encouraging him to elaborate and share his interests. "Superhero ones. Papa says they're too violent, but I like them anyway." Matteo's admission was tinged with a hint of defiance, a quiet rebellion against his father's disapproval. He was drawn to the heroism and adventure of superhero stories, perhaps finding in them a reflection of his own inner strength and resilience. "Smart kid. Which superhero is the best?" Clara's response was playful and encouraging, validating his interest and inviting him to share his opinion. "Spider-Man, because he's just a regular person who tries to help people." Matteo's choice revealed his own values and ideals. He admired Spider-Man's humility and selflessness, his willingness to use his powers to make a difference in the lives of ordinary people. Clara flipped the sandwich, the sizzling butter creating a fragrant aroma that filled the kitchen. "You know what? I think you and Spider-Man have a lot in common." Her words were carefully chosen, designed to boost his confidence and help him see himself in a more positive light. "I can't climb walls." Matteo's response was matter-of-fact, a literal interpretation of her statement that missed the deeper meaning. "No, but you're brave. You keep going even when things are hard. That's pretty heroic." Clara's explanation was heartfelt and sincere, highlighting his inner strength and resilience. She was helping him to recognize the heroism within himself, the courage he displayed every day in facing his challenges. Matteo went quiet, processing this. Then, so softly she almost missed it, "Nobody ever said that before." The words were barely audible, a fragile whisper that revealed the depth of his isolation and the lack of positive reinforcement in his life. Clara's throat tightened, her heart aching for this little boy who had been deprived of the simple affirmation that he deserved. She focused on plating the sandwich, cutting it into triangles the way her mom used to, a small act of love and care that transcended words. "Well, I'm saying it now." Her voice was firm, filled with a conviction that left no room for doubt. She was making a conscious effort to change the narrative, to provide him with the validation and encouragement he had been missing. She carried the plate to the dining room, Matteo following, his eyes fixed on the golden brown grilled cheese sandwich. Instead of the formal table with its intimidating grandeur, she found a smaller breakfast nook with windows overlooking the garden, a space that felt more intimate and inviting. "Here, much better than that museum out there." Clara's words were light-hearted, but they conveyed a deeper message, that comfort and connection were more important than formality and opulence. Matteo climbed into a chair, eyeing the sandwich with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. "It looks perfect. Taste it first. I might have burned it." Clara's words were self-deprecating, masking her own anxiety about whether she had met his expectations. He took a bite, chewed, and smiled, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "It's really good. Excellent. Dig in." Clara's relief was palpable, her heart swelling with satisfaction at having brought a moment of joy to this little boy's life. That's when Clara felt it, the weight of someone watching. She turned to find Lorenzo standing in the doorway, partially hidden by shadow, a silent observer in his own home. His expression was completely neutral, an impenetrable mask that revealed nothing of his thoughts or feelings, but his eyes tracked every movement, missing nothing. How long had he been there? The question lingered in the air, unanswered and unsettling. Clara met his gaze, refusing to look away, determined not to be intimidated by his. Here's the rewritten and expanded version of the text, translated and localized for an American audience, following your specific instructions. What's going to happen is this: you're going to delete those photos, block my number, and stay the hell away from Mateo. Because if you do anything to hurt that kid, I won't need Lorenzo to come after you. I'll handle it myself, personally. Sonia laughed, but it came out sounding brittle and fake. You think you're so tough now? Playing bodyguard all of a sudden? I think I'm someone who keeps her promises, Clara retorted, her voice hard. And I promised Mateo I'd protect him. That includes protecting him from people like you. You have 24 hours to change your mind. I won't, Sonia spat back, her expression twisting with pure rage. Then you're a fool. And when everything falls apart around you, when those photos leak and the truth all comes out, when Lorenzo shows you what he really is, don't come crying to me saying I didn't warn you. She turned on her heel and stormed off, leaving Clara standing alone in the parking lot with shaky hands and a heart pounding like a drum. Clara practically fell into her car and locked the doors with a click. She pulled out her phone, staring at Lorenzo's number on the screen. She should tell him right now. She should report all of this immediately. But Sonia's words kept echoing in her head, nagging at her. There are things about his condition you don't know. What the hell did that mean? Was Mateo's cerebral palsy somehow hiding something else entirely? Or was Sonia just trying to manipulate her? To get inside her head? Clara drove back to the estate, her mind spinning with questions and anxieties. The gates opened automatically as she approached, and she saw Lorenzo's car already parked in the driveway. He was home early, then. She found him out in the garden with Mateo, watching his son carefully as he navigated the stone path with his leg braces. Lorenzo's expression was soft, almost unguarded, something Clara rarely saw. Clara, Mateo waved excitedly. Look how far I walked. That's amazing, buddy, Lorenzo said, beaming. He turned to Clara, and his expression immediately shifted, becoming more serious, more watchful. What's wrong? What happened? Nothing, Clara mumbled. Your hands are shaking. Clara looked down, surprised. He was right. Can we talk privately? Lorenzo's eyes darkened, a flicker of something unreadable in them. He called to one of his men to watch Mateo, then led Clara inside to the familiar, intimidating space of his study. Tell me everything. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Sonia confronted me. She wants me to quit, to leave. She's threatening to release fake photos, making it look like we're involved. The temperature in the room seemed to drop about 10 degrees in an instant. What photos? Clara showed him the doctored images on her phone. Lorenzo's expression hardened, going from stone-faced to downright murderous in seconds. She's working with someone, Clara added quickly. She has to be. Those photos required surveillance. Someone was watching us. Lorenzo was already dialing his phone before she finished speaking. Alberto? Get me everything on Sonia Ramirez. Who she's talking to, where she's been, who's funding her. I want it in an hour. He hung up abruptly and looked back at Clara, his eyes intense. You should have called me the moment she approached you. I handled it. This isn't your world to handle, Clara. Then teach me. Clara's voice was surprisingly firm, even to her own ears. Because I'm not leaving Mateo. Not for threats, not for money, not for anything. Lorenzo stared at her, his gaze intense and unwavering. Something complicated moved behind his eyes, a flicker of surprise, perhaps even a hint of respect. She mentioned something else, Clara said carefully, choosing her words with precision. About Mateo's condition. That there are things I don't know. Lorenzo's expression closed off completely, becoming an impenetrable mask. Sonia is lying. Is she? Yes. But he looked away when he said it, a telltale sign. And Clara knew, with a certainty that settled like a stone in her stomach, that whatever secret Sonia was hinting at, it was very, very real. I can't do this. Mateo stood hesitantly in his bedroom doorway, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit that made him look older than his 8 years. His small hands twisted nervously together, and his leg braces gleamed faintly under the long, meticulously pressed dress pants Lorenzo had ordered specially for him. "Sure you can," Clara said gently, forcing a reassuring smile. "We've practiced walking on different surfaces all week. You're ready for this, Matteo." "But there will be photographers," Matteo protested, his voice small. "People staring. People are always staring." "People always stare at cool kids?" Clara countered, trying to lighten the mood. "Clara, I'm serious," Matteo said, his lower lip trembling slightly. She crouched down until she was at eye level with him, taking his hands in hers. "So am I, Matteo. You know what they'll see when they look at you? A brave, strong boy who doesn't let anything stop him. That's pretty damn cool in my book." Lorenzo appeared silently behind Matteo, dressed in a black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped straight out of a classic film. "The car is ready. We should go." "Papa, I don't think." Lorenzo's voice was firm but not unkind as he interrupted. "This is the Children's Arts Foundation Gala, Matteo. We donate to them every year. They've asked specifically if you'd attend. You don't have to stay long, but we need to make an appearance, son." Matteo looked at Clara, his expression desperate, pleading for help. "Will you stay with me the whole time?" "Every single second," Clara promised, squeezing his hand reassuringly. "Promise. Promise." The Art Institute of Chicago was ablaze with lights, transformed into a glittering palace for the evening. A long red carpet stretched out invitingly, lined with flashing cameras and throngs of people in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos streaming up the iconic steps. Clara felt wildly out of place and self-conscious in her borrowed dress, something Lorenzo's efficient assistant had arranged when he announced Clara would be attending as Matteo's companion for the evening. The moment they stepped out of the black SUV, a frenzy of cameras exploded around them. "Mr. Duca, over here." "Lorenzo, who's the woman? Is that your son?" Matteo froze instantly, his small hand locking tightly in Clara's. The seemingly endless stairs loomed ahead of them, a daunting obstacle course of marble, steep inclines, and a crush of chattering people. "Hey!" Clara whispered, gently but firmly stepping in front of Matteo, effectively blocking some of the cameras with her body. "Look at me, not them. Just focus on me, okay?" Matteo's eyes finally met hers, his expression still anxious but a little less panicked. "We're going to take this slow," Clara continued, her voice calm and reassuring. "One step at a time. If you need to stop, we stop. If you need to hold the railing, we hold it. It's your pace, Matteo. Okay?" He nodded tightly, breathing hard, trying to control his fear. Lorenzo moved ahead of them, a calculated move to draw attention away from Matteo and Clara, greeting Chicago's elite with practiced charm and effortless ease. Clara and Matteo followed slowly, carefully, taking each step deliberately. She kept her hand lightly on his arm, offering support and stability without pulling or rushing him, allowing him to set the rhythm. "That's it," she murmured encouragingly. "You're doing great." About halfway up the seemingly endless staircase, Matteo stumbled slightly, his foot catching on the edge of a step. Clara reacted instantly, her grip tightening on his arm, steadying him with a firm but casual touch, making it look like nothing had even happened, like they were just two people casually climbing a set of stairs. "Nice save," she murmured with a wink. "Keep going. You got this." By the time they finally reached the top of the stairs, Matteo was actually smiling, a small, but genuine smile that lit up his entire face. Clara heard the satisfied clicks of cameras capturing the precious moment. Inside, the vast museum had been transformed into a glittering ballroom, almost unrecognizable. Ice sculptures shimmered under the lights, a string quartet played elegant music in the background, and champagne towers sparkled enticingly. Lorenzo was immediately swarmed by a throng of people, all clamoring for his attention. Politicians, wealthy businessmen, socialites dripping in jewels. Everyone wanted a piece of Lorenzo Duca. "Miss Martinez?" Alberto appeared silently at her elbow, as if from nowhere. "Let me show you to your table." They were seated near the front of the room, at a table with a prominent placard displaying Lorenzo's name. Other families milled around, their children running playfully between the tables, laughing and chattering. Matteo watched them wistfully, a longing, almost heartbroken expression on his face. "You want to check out the art?" Clara asked gently, trying to distract him. "I heard they have a special kids gallery set up. Can we?" Matteo asked, his voice hopeful. "That's why we're here," Clara replied with a smile. "Let's go." They navigated through the crowded ballroom, Clara hyper-alert to every person who got too close, every lingering stare that lasted just a little too long. But for the most part, people just smiled politely. A few even greeted Matteo directly, offering words of encouragement and kindness. "Young man, I love your suit," an elderly woman said, her eyes twinkling. "Thank you," Matteo replied, his voice surprisingly strong and confident. In the kids' gallery, a variety of interactive exhibits had been set up to engage young minds. There were touchable sculptures, a digital painting wall, and art supply stations overflowing with colorful materials. Matteo's face lit up with excitement. "Can I try the painting wall?" he asked eagerly, practically bouncing on his toes. "Absolutely," Clara replied, grinning. "Go for it." For the next 20 minutes, Matteo was completely absorbed in creating swirling digital art, laughing with delight when colors blended together in unexpected and beautiful ways. Clara took a quick photo of him smiling at his colorful creation, capturing a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. Lost in the moment, she didn't notice the journalist watching them intently from across the gallery, or the photographer discreetly capturing images of Clara and Matteo together, heads bent over the artwork, looking comfortable, natural, and surprisingly happy. When they returned to the main ballroom for dinner, Lorenzo was watching for them, his expression unreadable, complicated. Relief, pride, and something else entirely. Something Clara couldn't quite name. "He's having a good time," Clara reported quietly, meeting Lorenzo's gaze. "I can see that," Lorenzo replied, his eyes still fixed on his son. "Thank you, Clara." During dinner, a woman in a designer gown, radiating an air of icy elegance and barely concealed disdain, approached their table. "Lorenzo, how wonderful to see Matteo out and about," she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "He's gotten so big." "Mrs. Hamilton," Lorenzo said smoothly, standing politely. "Yes, he has. And who is this?" "Mrs. Hamilton's eyes raked over Clara with undisguised curiosity, her expression subtly but unmistakably condescending. "Clara Martinez," Clara replied, meeting her gaze evenly. "I'm Matteo's companion." The word companion hung in the air, deliberately ambiguous, carrying a weight of unspoken implications. "How lovely." Mrs. Hamilton's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You must be very close with the family." "I take care of Matteo," Clara said, keeping her tone neutral and even. "I'm sure you do." The implication in her tone was crystal clear, suggesting something far more scandalous than simply caring for a child. After Mrs. Hamilton finally moved on, Lorenzo leaned closer to Clara, his voice low. "Ignore her. Chicago society thrives on speculation and gossip. It's their favorite pastime." "Is that going to be a problem?" Clara asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Not if we don't make it one," Lorenzo replied, his gaze steady. The next morning, Clara fully understood what Lorenzo meant. The Chicago Tribune Society page featured a large, prominent photo of Matteo beaming at the digital art wall, with Clara standing protectively beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. The caption read, "Lorenzo Duca's son, Matteo, makes rare public appearance with mysterious companion, Clara Martinez." Her phone immediately exploded with a barrage of texts from friends she hadn't spoken to in months, all wanting to know the details. Her mother called 3 times in rapid succession, her voice filled with worry and concern. Even Tommy from the diner, her old boss, texted, "You're famous now? What the hell is going on?" But it was the other article that made her blood run cold, chilling her to the bone. A sleazy gossip blog had posted multiple paparazzi-style photos. Matteo and Clara on the stairs, Clara at dinner, Clara in the gallery. The headline screamed, "Mob boss's secret. Duca's new nanny or something more?" The comment section was vicious, filled with cruel and hateful speculation. Gold digger using a disabled kid to get to his money. What happened to the real mother? She's probably just another one of his conquests. Clara's hands shook uncontrollably as she scrolled through the vile comments, her stomach churning with nausea. This was exactly what Sonia had threatened, and it was even worse than she had imagined. Alberto appeared silently in her doorway, his face grim. "Don't read those," he said, his voice low and serious. "Too late," Clara whispered, feeling the sting of tears in her eyes. "Clara, you need to see something else," Alberto said, his expression grave. He handed her his tablet, showing a different article from a crime blog, one that was far more ominous. Duca's weakness exposed. Rival families take notice of boss's vulnerable son. The article speculated about the potential security risks, about how Matteo's public appearance had inadvertently made him and Clara potential targets for Lorenzo's enemies. It quoted unnamed sources within the criminal underworld, saying Lorenzo had gone soft by allowing his disabled son into the spotlight, making him a liability. "This is bad," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "This is war." Alberto's voice was quiet, but filled with deadly certainty. By bringing Matteo out into the open, Lorenzo sent a message that his son isn't hidden away, that he's not ashamed. But his rivals received a different message entirely. That the boy is accessible. That you are too. "What do we do?" Clara asked, her mind racing. "Lorenzo is doubling security, of course. Marco will be with you and Matteo at all times outside the estate. We're monitoring all potential threats." Alberto paused, his gaze unwavering. "But Clara, you should know that Vincent Caruso's people were at that gala. We have security footage of them watching you specifically." Clara felt a wave of ice slide down her spine, her breath catching in her throat. Caruso. That was who Sonia was working with, she was sure of it. "We believe so," Alberto confirmed grimly. "And now they've seen how close you are to Matteo, how much Lorenzo trusts you. You've become a target, Clara." Alberto's expression was somber and intense. "Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent to Lorenzo." "What do I represent?" Clara asked, her voice barely audible. "Hope," Alberto replied bluntly. "Weakness. A way in." And with that, Alberto stood, his face like a stone. "Be careful, Clara. The game just changed." After he left, Clara sat alone in her room, staring blankly at the photos of Matteo's smiling face on her phone. One night out, one brief moment of normalcy, and now they were both in someone's crosshairs, targets for ruthless enemies. Her phone buzzed suddenly, displaying an unknown number. The text message was simple, chillingly concise. "He looked happy last night. Enjoy it while it lasts." Clara deleted the message instantly, but the damage was already done. They'd been seen. They'd been noticed. And somewhere in Chicago, dangerous people were making plans, drawing up strategies that could shatter everything. The photos dropped at midnight, hitting the internet like a bomb. Clara was reading in bed when her phone started buzzing nonstop. Text after text, notification after notification flooded her screen. She opened Twitter with a sinking feeling in her stomach and saw that #DucaScandal was already trending, climbing rapidly. The doctored photos were everywhere. Clara and Lorenzo standing close together in the garden, except they had never stood that close. Clara touching his arm at dinner, except that was Matteo's arm, digitally cropped out of the image. Clara leaving Lorenzo's study late at night, except that was from the night she'd reported Sonia's threats, and the timestamp on the security footage had been maliciously changed to make it look like 2 a.m. The headlines were brutal, designed to inflict maximum damage. Nanny or mistress inside Lorenzo Duca's home? Mob boss's secret romance. From waitress to mansion in days. Sources say Duca's companion shares more than meals with crime boss. The photos looked incredibly real, professionally done, and utterly damning. Clara's hands shook as she frantically scrolled through the onslaught of accusations and speculation. Twitter was on fire with gossip and outrage. Instagram influencers were making commentary videos, dissecting every detail of the fabricated scandal. Even legitimate news sites were reluctantly picking up the story, burying carefully worded, alleged disclaimers deep within their articles. Her phone rang, and she saw her mother's name on the screen. "Mija, what is happening?" Her mother's voice trembled with worry. "Mrs. Garcia showed me these pictures online. Please, Clara, tell me this isn't true." "Mom, they're fake," Clara pleaded, her voice cracking. "Someone edited them. They're not real." "They look very real, Clara," her mother said, her voice heavy with doubt. "I know, Mom, but I promise you, nothing is happening between me and Mr. Duca. I'm just taking care of his son. That's all. People are saying terrible things about you, about him, about everything." Her mother continued, her voice tight with anxiety. "Maybe you should come home, Clara. Just come home." "I can't, Mom," Clara said, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her. "Mateo needs me. I made him a promise." "And what about what you need? What about your safety, Clara? This man is dangerous. Everyone knows it." Her mother's voice broke, tears choking her words. "Mom, I have to go," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll call you tomorrow." She hung up the phone quickly, cutting off her mother before she could argue further, before the seeds of doubt in her voice could take root in Clara's own mind. A sharp knock on her door made her jump, her heart leaping into her throat. Marco stood silently in the hallway, his expression grim and unreadable. "Mr. Duca wants to see you now." Clara's blood went cold. What time was it? This was it, she realized with a sinking feeling. She was fired. Lorenzo had seen the photos, believed them, or maybe didn't even care if they were real, and was simply cutting his losses, protecting himself and his son. She'd been stupid to think this could actually work, to let herself believe she could make a difference. She pulled a sweatshirt quickly over her pajamas, trying to compose herself, and followed Marco silently through the dark hallways. The estate felt different at night, more like a fortress than a home, cold and imposing. Lorenzo's study door was open, a rectangle of light spilling out into the otherwise dark corridor. He stood by the window, his back to the door, still dressed in the shirt and pants he'd worn to dinner, but his tie was gone, and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing the hard lines of his forearms. "Sir." Clara's voice was barely audible, a hesitant whisper. "Close the door," he instructed, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. She did as she was told, pushing the heavy door shut. The click of the latch echoed in the silent room like a gunshot. Lorenzo turned slowly, and Clara had never seen him look quite like this before. Exhausted, furious, and something else. Something that looked suspiciously like wounded, maybe even betrayed. "I assume you've seen them," he said quietly, his gaze intense and unwavering. "The photos?" "Yes. All of them, I think so." Lorenzo picked up his tablet from the desk and scrolled through image after image, his expression growing darker with each one. Some Clara recognized from the surveillance photo Sonia had shown her. Others were new, even more intimate, even more skillfully manipulated. One showed Clara allegedly leaving Lorenzo's bedroom at dawn, her hair tousled, her clothes slightly disheveled. Another showed them in what looked like a passionate embrace, but was actually her catching Mateo from a stumble, with Mateo digitally removed from the frame. "These are all over the internet," Lorenzo said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Every gossip site, every social media platform. By morning, they'll be on the news. My lawyers are already working on takedown notices. But once something is online, it's almost impossible to erase it completely." He trailed off, his jaw clenched. Clara's throat was tight, her chest aching. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice filled with genuine remorse. "For what?" Lorenzo's voice was sharp, cutting through her self-reproach. "For bringing this to your door. Sonia warned me she'd do this. I should have." "You should have what, Clara?" Lorenzo interrupted, his voice even sharper now. "Run? Let her win." "I should have been more careful," Clara said, her voice small. "Clara, these photos are fabricated," Lorenzo said, his gaze intense. My security team has already confirmed it. The timestamps have been altered. The angles are impossible. Some of the images are composites of multiple shots. They're lies. He set the tablet down on the desk with a heavy thud. Clara's knees nearly buckled beneath her with relief. You believe me? Of course I believe you, Lorenzo said, his expression almost offended. Did you honestly think I wouldn't? I thought. Clara's voice broke, tears welling up in her eyes. I thought you were firing me. Something shifted subtly in Lorenzo's expression. He moved closer to her, stopping just a few feet away. In the dim light of the study, he looked younger, more vulnerable, more human than Clara had ever seen him before. Clara, I need you to understand something, he said, his voice low and intense. This is what my world looks like. Lies, manipulation, attacks on anything and anyone I care about. My enemies will use you against me. They'll fabricate stories, create scandals, put you in danger. All to weaken me, to get to me. I know, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Do you really know? Lorenzo asked, his gaze unwavering. Because this is just the beginning. This is nothing compared to what they'll do if they think they can break me through you. Then what are you saying? Clara asked, her voice barely audible. Are you saying that I should leave? That I should run? I'm saying you need to decide whether you're ready for this world, Clara. Lorenzo replied, his jaw tight. Whether you're ready for the scrutiny, the danger, the constant threat. Whether protecting my son is worth becoming a target yourself. Clara thought instantly about Matteo, sleeping upstairs, probably unaware of any of this chaos. She thought about the genuine smile on his face at the museum, about the way he'd started calling her Clara instead of Miss Martinez, like she was actually part of the family. I already decided, she said firmly, her voice gaining strength. When I signed that contract, when I promised Matteo I wouldn't leave him. I'm ready. You don't know what you're saying, Clara? Lorenzo said, his voice laced with warning. Yes, I do. Clara took a step closer to him, her gaze unwavering. You're right. I didn't understand your world when I walked into it. But I understand now. I understand that people will try to hurt Matteo to hurt you. That they'll use me as a weapon if they can. That staying here means putting myself in the crosshairs. She met his intense gaze directly. And I'm staying anyway. Lorenzo stared at her, his expression unreadable. Something complex and conflicted moved across his face. A whirlwind of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. Why? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. Because that little boy upstairs deserves someone who won't run when things get hard, Clara replied, her voice steady and resolute. Because for the first time in my life, I'm doing something that actually matters. And because, despite everything, the danger, the lies, the threats, I trust you, Lorenzo, to keep us safe. The words hung heavily between them, thick with unspoken meaning. You trust me? Lorenzo repeated, saying the words slowly, almost as if he were testing them, as if they were a foreign language he wasn't quite sure how to speak. That's a mistake. No, it's not, Clara insisted, her gaze unwavering. Lorenzo turned back to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. My wife died 6 years ago, he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. Gabriella. She was caught in crossfire meant for me. A rival family's attempt on my life. She wasn't even the target, but she's just as dead. His voice was hollow, empty. After that, I built walls, he continued, his voice barely audible. I kept Matteo hidden away, kept my emotions locked down tight, kept everyone at arm's length. Because caring about people makes you weak, makes you vulnerable. Lorenzo paused, taking a deep breath. Then you walked in, Clara, and you destroyed every single wall I built. You made my son visible again. You made me feel. He stopped abruptly, as if realizing he'd said too much. You made me hope, and hope is the most dangerous thing in my world. Clara's chest ached with a mixture of sympathy and understanding. Maybe it's also the most important thing. He turned back to face her, and for the first time, she saw past the hardened crime boss, past the fiercely protective father, to the man underneath, scared, lonely, and desperate to do what was right by his son while still keeping him safe from the darkness that surrounded him. "If you stay, Clara," Lorenzo said quietly, his voice filled with a newfound vulnerability, "everything changes for all of us." "Then let it change," Clara replied, her voice resolute. They stood in the study, bathed in the soft glow of the city lights twinkling through the windows. Two people from vastly different worlds, bound together by a shared desire to protect the same little boy. "We'll handle Sonia," Lorenzo said finally, breaking the silence. "And Caruso, and anyone else who comes after you. We will take care of it." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, softening his features. "You said you trust me, Clara. That goes both ways." It was the first time he'd openly admitted that he needed anyone, and the admission was both surprising and deeply affecting. As Clara left the study, she realized that the entire foundation of their relationship had shifted. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was family, and families were worth fighting for, worth protecting at all costs. The therapy clinic was located in a converted brownstone in Lycan Park, a trendy, affluent neighborhood known for its leafy streets and upscale boutiques. The building had been thoughtfully renovated to provide accessibility, with ramps leading to the entrance and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. Clara had been there dozens of times now, and the routine was always the same. Marco drove, always taking different routes to avoid predictability. Two other security men swept the building before they entered, checking for any signs of trouble, then stayed in the lobby while Clara accompanied Matteo to his session. But today felt different somehow. Clara couldn't explain it, but there was a tightness in her chest, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck. She'd learned to trust her instincts during her years working late shifts in rough neighborhoods. Something just felt wrong. "You okay?" Marco asked, noticing her scanning the street with a worried expression. "Yeah, just jumpy after everything that's been going on," Clara replied, forcing a smile. "Understandable, but you're safe here. We've got eyes everywhere," Marco reassured her, his hand never straying far from his holstered weapon. Inside, Dr. Kim greeted them with her usual warm smile, her demeanor calm and professional. "Ready to work, Matteo?" "Always," Matteo replied enthusiastically, his confidence growing with each session. He seemed almost eager for therapy now, a far cry from the hesitant, fearful boy she'd first met. Clara settled into her usual chair by the window, trying to appear relaxed while her senses remained on high alert. Matteo started his warm-up stretches, his movements becoming smoother and more fluid with each passing week. Outside, Lycan Park bustled with activity. Morning joggers pounded the pavement, dog walkers strolled leisurely along the sidewalks, and families pushed strollers along the tree-lined streets. It all looked perfectly normal, safe, and idyllic. Then she saw the van. Dark blue, no company logos, no identifying markings of any kind. The windows were heavily tinted, making it impossible to see inside. It had circled the block twice now, slowing down noticeably each time it passed the clinic. The driver was wearing sunglasses, despite the overcast sky, another subtle detail that set off alarm bells in Clara's mind. "Marco," Clara said, keeping her voice calm and even, careful not to alarm Matteo. "Blue van, northeast corner. It's been around 3 times already." Marco's hand went to his phone immediately, his eyes scanning the street with laser-like focus. "I see it. Running the plates now." The van parked across the street from the clinic, its engine still running, a clear indication that whoever was inside was waiting, watching. "Dr. Kim," Clara said, her voice steady but urgent. "I need you to take Matteo to the back room. Now, please." Dr. Kim's eyes widened with alarm. "What's happening, Clara? What's going on?" "Just a precaution," Clara replied, trying to reassure her. "Please just trust me, Dr." Kim looked at Marco, her expression pleading for an explanation. Marco nodded sharply, confirming Clara's unspoken warning. She took Matteo's hand, her grip firm but gentle. "Come on, buddy," she said, her voice unusually serious. "Let's try the parallel bars in the other room. It'll be more fun." "But Clara, I'll be right there, Matteo protested, his voice filled with concern. I promise, Matteo, Clara said reassuringly, her gaze locked on his. Just go with Dr. Kim for now. I'll be there soon. The moment they disappeared into the back room, two men exited the van. Both wore bulky jackets that seemed too heavy and out of place for the relatively mild weather. Both walked with a clear sense of purpose, heading directly toward the clinic entrance. We've got company, Marco said into his phone, his voice low and tense. Two hostiles approaching the clinic. Send backup now ASAP. The clinic's front door opened with a creak. Marco moved quickly to intercept the two men, his hand instinctively reaching inside his jacket, hovering near his weapon. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Clinic's closed for private session, Marco said firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument. We have an appointment, the first man replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. No, you don't, Marco said, his tone hardening. The second man's hand moved subtly toward his waistband, a clear indication that he was armed. Marco was faster, drawing his weapon in a lightning-fast motion. Don't, he warned, his voice low and menacing. Everything seemed to happen at once, a chaotic blur of motion and sound. The back door of the clinic burst open unexpectedly. Two more men rushed into the clinic from the alley entrance, heading straight for the therapy rooms, their faces grim and determined. Clara caught a glimpse of Matteo's terrified face through the doorway, his eyes wide with fear. She reacted on pure instinct, her years of street smarts kicking in. Clara sprinted toward the back room, putting herself directly between the intruders and Matteo, shielding him from harm. Dr. Kim had already pushed Matteo behind a piece of therapy equipment, using her own body as a shield. Get back, Clara shouted, her voice filled with adrenaline. The first man grabbed her arm roughly, trying to shove her aside. Clara reacted swiftly, drawing on her self-defense skills honed from years of working in rough crowds at the diner. She stomped hard on his instep, grinding her heel into his foot, and simultaneously drove her elbow into his solar plexus with surprising force. He wheezed in pain, stumbling backward, momentarily incapacitated. The second man was bigger, stronger, and faster. He shoved past Clara, reaching for Matteo. No! Clara screamed, throwing herself at him, clinging desperately to his arm, using her full weight to slow him down. Run, Matteo, run. A fist connected brutally with her ribs, sending a jolt of agonizing pain through her side. She gasped for breath, but didn't let go of the man's arm. Her fingers locked tightly around his jacket, refusing to release her grip. Stupid bitch. He snarled, his face contorted with rage. He shoved her hard into the wall with brutal force. Clara's head cracked against the plaster, her vision blurring momentarily, but she could still see Matteo scrambling toward the corner of the room. Dr. Kim dragging him frantically behind a large treatment table, desperately trying to protect him. The man suddenly pulled out a gun, his eyes cold and devoid of emotion. Clara's blood turned to ice. Without thinking, acting purely on instinct, she launched herself at him again, grabbing his gun hand, desperately forcing it upward, away from Matteo. The weapon discharged with a deafening roar, the bullet tearing through the ceiling. Plaster rained down in a shower of white dust. Clara! Matteo's terrified scream cut through the chaos, piercing the air. Then Marco was there, a blur of motion, tackling the gunman from behind with incredible force, sending him crashing to the floor. The weapon clattered across the linoleum. More of Lorenzo's men burst through both entrances of the clinic simultaneously, weapons drawn, shouting commands, their faces grim and determined. Down! Everyone down now! Get down! The attackers were subdued in seconds, their movements professional, efficient, and brutally effective. One tried to run and was slammed face-first into the floor, his body twitching. Another raised his weapon in defiance, and Marco shot him instantly in the shoulder without hesitation, his face a mask of cold fury. Clara slid slowly down the wall, her legs giving out beneath her. Her ribs screamed in agony. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, but Matteo was safe. He was alive. Clara. Mateo tried desperately to run to her, his face stained with tears, but Dr. Kim held him back firmly, preventing him from getting any closer to the danger. "I'm okay," Clara managed to say, her voice weak and raspy, though blood trickled steadily from a gash on her temple. "I'm okay, Mateo. It's okay." Marco was already on his phone relay. Lorenzo showed up, and Clara had never witnessed him in such a state. He burst through the door like a tempest, appearing composed on the surface, yet with a barely concealed rage simmering just beneath. His eyes scanned the area, taking in his men holding the suspects, Marco's bloodied knuckles, Clara leaning against the wall as a paramedic attended to her head, and Mateo, ashen and trembling in Dr. Kim's embrace. "Papa." Mateo broke away and dashed toward his father. Lorenzo caught him, holding him tightly, his eyes squeezed shut. "You're safe. You're safe," Lorenzo's voice rasped. Then his gaze shifted to Clara. He knelt beside her, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. "What happened?" "They came for Mateo. The schedule was leaked," Clara said, her voice steady despite the pain. "Sonia. It had to be Sonia." Lorenzo's expression shifted from concern to something far more menacing. "Marco status?" "4 attackers. 2 in custody, 1 wounded, 1 fled. Caruso's men were sure of it. We got there in time because Miss Martinez raised the alarm." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. He looked at Clara, really looked at her, noticing the blood on her face, the way she was holding her ribs, the fierce protectiveness still blazing in her eyes. "You could have been killed. So could Mateo." "Lorenzo, I promised him I'd keep him safe. That's what I did." Lorenzo's hand gripped her shoulder tighter. For a fleeting moment, his composure shattered completely, and she glimpsed fear, fury, and something that resembled awe. "Take her to the estate," Lorenzo instructed Marco. "Private doctor, full security detail." He stood, his voice dropping to a chilling, lethal tone. "No hospitals. And bring me Sonia Ramirez now." As they helped Clara to her feet, she caught Lorenzo's expression. He was making calls, his voice low but lethal, issuing orders, formulating plans. This wasn't just a crime boss safeguarding his assets. This was a father whose child had been threatened, and someone was going to suffer the consequences. Mateo grabbed Clara's hand as they headed toward the SUV. "You saved me." Clara gently squeezed his hand. "Always, kiddo. That's what family does." Behind them, Lorenzo watched, and for the first time in 6 years, he allowed himself to fully grasp the gravity of what was at stake. Not only his son's safety, but also the woman who had selflessly put herself in harm's way to protect him. Clara awoke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows and the persistent ache of her bruised ribs. The private doctor had prescribed rest, painkillers, and strict instructions to remain still for 24 hours. She had only managed 6. Mateo was having breakfast downstairs, and she needed to see him. She needed to assure herself that he was all right. She had made it halfway down the hallway before Lorenzo appeared, blocking her path. "What are you doing out of bed?" "Checking on Mateo. He's fine. Marco is with him. You need rest." "I've rested enough." Clara tried to move past him, but Lorenzo's hand on her arm stopped her, gently but firmly. "Clara, you have a concussion and cracked ribs." The doctor said. "I know what the doctor said, but Mateo needs to see I'm okay, or he'll worry." Lorenzo studied her face, then sighed. 5 minutes, then back to bed. They walked together to the breakfast nook. Mateo's face lit up when he saw her. "Clara, you're awake." "Hey, kiddo. How are you feeling?" "Better now." Mateo's eyes were red-rimmed, as if he had been crying. "I had bad dreams." Clara carefully sat beside him, disregarding the pain in her ribs. "About yesterday?" He nodded. "About you getting hurt because of me." "Mateo, look at me." Clara waited until he met her eyes. "Nothing that happened yesterday was your fault. Those men made bad choices. You didn't. But if I wasn't there, if you weren't there, I wouldn't have a reason to be brave." Clara smiled. "You make me braver, kiddo, not weaker." Lorenzo watched this exchange from the doorway, his expression unreadable. After breakfast, he found her in the garden. She was sitting on a bench, breathing carefully, watching birds in the fountain. "You should be resting." "I am sitting." "That's basically resting." Lorenzo sat beside her, maintaining a cautious distance. For a long moment, neither spoke. "We have Sonia," he finally said. Clara's head snapped toward him. "When my men found her last night, she was trying to leave the city." His voice was flat, controlled. "She's been questioned, and she confirmed everything. She was working for Vincent Caruso. He paid her to leak information. Matteo's schedules, security routines, the layout of the house. The attack yesterday was planned using details she provided." Clara felt sick. She had put Matteo in danger for money. It was more than money. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "Caruso promised to ruin me. Sonia wanted revenge for being fired. So, she gave him the tools to make me look weak. A don who couldn't even protect his own son. What happens to her now?" Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. "That depends on her cooperation with the authorities. My lawyers are working with the FBI. Caruso's operation has been under investigation for months. Sonia's testimony could be valuable." "You're turning her in." "Not," Clara trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Not killing her." Lorenzo's smile was bitter. "I'm not a murderer, Clara. I'm many things, but not that. Sonia will face justice, legal justice, as will Caruso, if we can connect him directly to the attack." Clara absorbed this. Everything she'd been told about Lorenzo Duca, about who he was, suddenly felt more complicated. "There's something else," Lorenzo said quietly. Sonia admitted she was intentionally neglecting Matteo. Withholding food wasn't just about control, it was sabotage. She wanted him to fail, to regress, to make me look like an incompetent father. She fed information to my rivals about his condition, painted him as my weakness. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She was hurting him on purpose. "For 3 years," Lorenzo's voice cracked slightly, "and I didn't see it. I trusted her with my son, and she was slowly destroying him. Lorenzo, you couldn't have known. I should have known." He turned to face her fully. "I was so focused on keeping him hidden, keeping him safe from external threats, that I missed the threat inside my own house. I built walls so high that even Matteo couldn't see over them. I thought isolation meant protection. You were trying to keep him safe. I was keeping him lonely." Lorenzo's dark eyes were raw with emotion. "Until you just walked in. You didn't ask permission. You didn't follow protocols. You just saw a hungry child and fed him soup." Clara's throat tightened. It was just soup. It was everything. Lorenzo's voice was barely above a whisper. "You gave him something I'd forgotten how to give. Normalcy, kindness without conditions. The chance to just be a kid." The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken emotions. "Clara, I need to tell you something." Lorenzo's usual control was faltering. "When I saw you at that clinic, bleeding, hurt, because you threw yourself in front of my son." He stopped, struggling with the words. "I've spent 6 years making sure I never cared about anyone beyond Matteo. Caring means vulnerability. It means weakness. It means being human. In my world, being human gets you killed. Then maybe your world needs to change." Lorenzo looked at her, really looked at her, and Clara saw everything he was trying to suppress. The fear, the longing, the impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, there was room in his fortress for something other than survival. "You terrify me," he admitted quietly. "Not because of who you are, but because of what you make me feel, what you make me want." Clara's breath caught. "Lorenzo, you make me want to believe that goodness exists, that my son can have a normal life, that I can be more than what I've become." His hand moved toward hers, stopping just short of contact. "You walked into my life with a bowl of soup and broke every rule I'd built to keep myself safe. Maybe those rules needed breaking." Lorenzo's eyes held hers, and for the first time, she saw not the crime boss or the protective father, but just a man. Scared, lonely, desperately trying to do right by the people he loved. "Thank you," he said softly, "for saving my son, for staying when anyone sensible would run, for being exactly what we needed, even when we didn't know we needed it." Clara's hand closed the gap, her fingers brushing his. "Thank you for letting me stay." They sat in the garden as morning transitioned into afternoon, not quite touching, yet not entirely separate either. The walls Lorenzo had so meticulously constructed were crumbling, and for the first time he wasn't rushing to rebuild them. Inside, through the window, Matteo watched his father and Clara sitting together. He smiled. Things were changing. Scary things, complicated things, but also good things. His father was laughing, actually laughing at something Clara said. And Matteo thought maybe, just maybe, they were becoming the family he'd always longed for. 2 days after the attack, Lorenzo convened a meeting with the entire household staff. Clara stood beside him in the main hall, her ribs still taped, a fading bruise on her temple. Every member of the household staff was assembled. Housekeepers, kitchen staff, groundskeepers, security, even Mrs. Chun, her expression carefully neutral. Effective immediately, Lorenzo announced, his voice commanding, "Clara Martinez is the head of Matteo's personal care team. All decisions regarding my son's schedule, activities, medical appointments, and daily routine go through her. No exceptions." Mrs. Chun's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. "Miss Martinez has proven her dedication beyond question. She's earned not just my trust but my son's trust. That makes her family." Lorenzo's eyes swept the room. "Anyone who has a problem with this arrangement is free to submit their resignation. Otherwise, you'll treat her with the respect this position deserves." The silence was absolute. "Are we clear?" A chorus of yes, sir echoed through the hall. After the meeting, Mrs. Chun approached Clara. For a moment, Clara braced herself for another confrontation. Instead, the older woman extended her hand. "I was wrong about you," Mrs. Chun said quietly. "I thought you were temporary, someone playing a role. But you threw yourself in front of danger for that boy without hesitation." She paused. "That's not acting. That's family." Clara shook her hand, surprised by the warmth of the gesture. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm a terrible person to work for when I'm not undermining you." Mrs. Chun's smile was slight but genuine. "But I'll do my job properly now. You focus on Matteo. I'll handle the rest." Over the next 2 days, the household transformed. Clara established new routines. Breakfast in the garden when the weather allowed, afternoon reading time in the library, evening walks around the estate grounds. Matteo thrived under the structure that felt like freedom rather than restriction. His physical improvements were remarkable. Dr. Kim reported increased strength and flexibility. His appetite was healthy. His sleep improved. But more than that, he was happy. Clara found him one afternoon in the library, writing furiously in a notebook. "What are you working on?" "My dragon story. I'm on chapter 3. Matteo looked up, beaming. "Want to hear it?" As he read, his voice strong and confident, Clara felt something settle within her chest. Purpose, belonging, home. That evening, Lorenzo requested a private dinner. Just the 3 of them, no staff hovering, no formality. Clara made grilled cheese for Matteo and pasta for the adults. They ate in the breakfast nook, the one room in the massive estate that felt genuinely warm. "Papa, guess what?" Matteo said through a mouthful of sandwich. "I walked the whole garden path today without stopping twice." "That's incredible, son." Lorenzo's pride was evident. "I'm very proud of you," Clara said. "I'm getting stronger every day." Clara's right. They talked about books, about Matteo's story, about the new puppy Alberto's daughter had adopted, normal things, family things, the kind of dinner most people took for granted, but Lorenzo had forgotten was possible. After Matteo went to bed, Clara and Lorenzo lingered in the garden. Alberto joined them, carrying 3 glasses and a bottle of wine. To surviving another week in the Duca household, Alberto said, pouring, which is more eventful than most people's entire lives. Clara laughed, accepting a glass. "Is it always like this?" "No," Alberto said seriously. It's never been like this. Usually it's just business, meetings, threats, strategy. This, he gestured at the house where Matteo's bedroom light glowed warmly. This is new. Lorenzo was watching that window, his expression softer than Clara had ever seen it. She's changing everything, Alberto said quietly to Lorenzo, his voice low enough that Clara almost missed it. Lorenzo didn't respond immediately. He just watched the light where his son slept, safe and happy, probably dreaming about dragons and knights who became friends. She already has, Lorenzo finally replied. The three of them sat in comfortable silence as the Chicago skyline glittered in the distance. Clara thought about the woman she'd been 10 days ago. Stressed, broke, uncertain. That woman wouldn't recognize her life now, but she wouldn't trade it for anything. Clara? Matteo's voice called from his window. Can you come read with me? Be right there. Clara set down her glass and stood, wincing slightly at her ribs. Lorenzo stood too. I'll come with you if that's okay. Of course. They walked inside together, Lorenzo's hand briefly touching the small of her back, a gesture so natural it seemed unconscious. In Matteo's room, they settled on either side of his bed while he read from his dragon story. Matteo's voice filled the room, animated and joyful. Lorenzo listened with complete attention, his hand resting near Clara's on the bedspread, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the warmth. When Matteo finally fell asleep, Clara and Lorenzo stood in the doorway, watching him breathe peacefully. Thank you, Lorenzo whispered, for all of this. You don't have to keep thanking me. Yes, I do. He looked at her, and Clara saw everything he couldn't quite articulate yet. The walls hadn't completely crumbled, but they were definitely deteriorating. You gave me my son back. You gave me. He paused, but Clara understood hope, family, a reason to be more than just about survival. We're just getting started, Clara said softly. Lorenzo's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers intertwining. I know. They stood together in the quiet house, watching over the boy who'd brought them together. Outside, Chicago throbbed with its usual chaos. Deals being brokered, threats being devised. The intricate dance of power and peril that defined Lorenzo's world. But here, in this moment, there was only peace. A father learning to be present, a son learning to flourish, and a woman who'd wandered into their lives armed with nothing but kindness, and in doing so, altered everything. The future remained uncertain, even perilous. But for the first time in years, it also held promise, and that was sufficient.